The most recent episode of Critical Role definitely lived up to the hype, so let's talk about some of the potential game-changing moments that happened. And obviously we have to start with the Ashton versus Ratanish fight. And firstly, my heart goes out to Taliesin because looking back, I think you could definitely see how he was thinking he could use his gravity surges in this fight. Because all signs were pointing to the fact that Ratanish was a barbarian too. And I think Taliesin was definitely thinking that if he could draw Ratanish into an unarmed fight, that he could then begin to take over with his gravity surges, because all he would need is one critical hit to completely turn the tide of battle. But like we saw, Matt ruled that the unarmed strikes would not work with the gravity surges because they were not weapons. And I'm going to defend Matt on this one because I actually agree with the ruling. Now, I know in the past that Jeremy Crawford has said unarmed strikes are weapon attacks, but that's bullshit. And this might be controversial, but Jeremy Crawford is just wrong sometimes. Not empirically wrong, but every DM runs their game their own way. DM Fiat is rule 1. So while it sucks at the moment because Taliesin was basing his strategy off a bit of information that was proven false, it is Matt's game and he can run it however he wants. But then we have to look at the results of that, which is Ashton was just so clearly outmatched in that combat. Even with help from fresh cut grass, there was just no chance that he had. And with taking Ashton down, Paragons Call gained an incredible amount of prestige. They skyrocketed themselves into a position of power within the city of Drusar. And honestly, this has me a little bit nervous. They're obviously a powerful group working with some very powerful and evil people. There's no doubt in my mind that we'll be seeing more of them, and probably in a villain or antagonistic role. And at least for this foreseeable future, the party is not strong enough to go against them. After the fight though, the night continues onward. A few minor things happen during this time. We can see that Gavis talks to Armand, Ratanish pulls Ashton in and talks to him. They seem to have a cordial conversation. Ratanish tries to gently pressure Ashton into giving up some information, and Ashton does a pretty good job of not giving too much away. However, eventually the party goes looking for Cyrus. As they go looking for Cyrus, they hear screams from 2 guards that went looking in the room that Chetney saw Emoth Cat in her monstrous form in with the other Shade Creepers. And in one of my favorite moments of this entire episode, Fresh Cut Grass just wheels in and goes looking. And eventually what he finds is Lady Emoth on the ceiling before she drops down and battle begins. And I wouldn't even say that this is a close battle, as it's pretty clear that the party was overpowering Lady Emoth. So I was not surprised when eventually Emoth begins to run. Unfortunately though, the party cannot seal the deal and Lady Emoth escapes by going down into one of these subterranean tunnels that are popping up all around Drusar. One day I hope the party follows one of these tunnels so we can actually see what the Shade Creeper hive looks like. Or maybe it's not a hive, maybe it is just some weird fortress underground base. Whatever the case, the party is able to save at least one of the 2 guards, and he comes in handy later. It is also revealed that the room that was being plundered by Lady Emoth was Grizz's room. And of course, Grizz Alakratos is the headmaster of the Alliance of Allsight that we met last session. So I guess the question is, what is going on with the Alliance of Allsight, or what information might they have that is of such particular interest? I think this eventually points to the fact that we will be heading to Ashanador later in the campaign. My initial thought though is that this could have something to do with the Gorgon Eye, or the fact that maybe they're trying to alter the curse in some way. Maybe instead of turning into a werewolf, they're trying to turn people into these weird aberrant goop creatures like Duggar and Emoth are. And with Rudis coming into its full zenith soon, maybe that's not such a far reach. But then, the whole session gets turned up on its head as Cyrus is captured by the Green Seeker detectives. These detectives don't have any allegiance to one particular group. They simply, according to Matt, go around Marquette trying to solve crimes for the greater good, I suppose? My guess is that they take direct inspiration from Sherlock Holmes and other kind of pulp detectives. So then the group attempts to go about saving Cyrus, which in the moment, as I saw what was happening, I knew that this could not end well. After a few failed attempts by Laudna to scare the people away, it is Dorian who steps up to the plate and pulls out a smoke grenade that he bought from Gilmore and Exandria Unlimited and throws it out into the middle of the ballroom. Rushing forward, he attempts to go and save Cyrus, and it looks like it's not going well. And then, in a big surprise, Lord Esteros steps forward into the smoke and begins knocking people around with his cane. Dorian turns Cyrus invisible, and then the entire group rushes away from the ball into their carriages and goes back to Lord Esteros' estate. And there we learn just how fucking stupid Cyrus is. I mean, he is one of the most unlikable NPCs that we've had in a while. In a last-ditch effort to clear his name, he was enlisted by Lady Emoth to help her steal things from members of the Mahan houses to just make a little bit of trouble, and I believe it was, like how Dorian pointed out, he got in trouble from potentially quote-unquote stealing from a Mahan house, so he goes and he steals from more Mahan houses. He's just absolutely terrible. Worse still, he was also blamed for blowing up the moon tower, which the party did themselves. And at this point, Lord Esteros comes to, I think, the right conclusion that it's just too dangerous for Cyrus and Dorian to stay here in Drusar any longer. He has a skyship leaving for Emon soon and says that he can smuggle them on board. And it broke my heart when Dorian decided that, yeah, he would go. And I think, of course, this was generally planned, but I'm sad to see the end of Robbie on this show. And let's just take a moment to really appreciate Robbie and everything he's done in Campaign 3. He was a light in this show, someone who had so much energy and always showed up at the table ready to play. He was likable, a great role player, and fit right in with the group. Every scene that he was in was made better by his presence. He added so much to the story and the team dynamic. And I think I can speak for the Critter community here and say that we would have loved him to stay no matter what length of time. He truly grew on me as I watched him play with the rest of the cast. And I am sincerely grateful that he will return for a 2-part, I guess, mini-series of Exandria Unlimited. Although I think that for at least a few weeks, the show will not feel the same with Robbie gone. He is truly delightful. So thank you, Robbie Damon, for giving us all your time and effort and energy. You were one of the best guests that Critical Role has ever had. And moving away from that topic, I also want to touch on Lord Esteros' reaction to this entire night, because it honestly surprised me. He's such a shy and cautious and reserved character that I thought he would be angry at all the commotion that the party caused. But I think his true colors really came through in this moment. He wants change, he wants action. And the party created that change, created that action. They did things that Lord Esteros could never do. And it was a shift that I was not expecting, but one I'm kind of glad that Matt decided to make. Because Lord Esteros really is beginning to come out of his shell as a character. And I think looking back, the group and Lord E have come so far together. He's really becoming an inseparable part of this campaign for me. I'm glad that he's their mentor figure and their guide, but they're also rubbing off on him as well. I suppose that I'm really just glad that this is not a one-way street in this relationship, how both groups are growing from each other. And one final thing that we need to touch on is the name. The party finally decided on a name, Bell's Hells, and this wasn't the name that I was most excited for. I think that there were other kind of cooler names that were being thrown out there, but I think this is a name that will grow over time. Because we have to remember that the Mighty Nine, when we originally heard that, we didn't think that it was some great name. It was a joke name. But the Mighty Nine grew into something more. And I think Bell's Hells has the potential to grow into something more. And I think that's the arc that this name will probably take. And besides, it's just way too early to judge this name. It has no great deeds under its belt yet. So I think it will be kind of mid-campaign before we can really start judging this name. But hey, let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you need some content to watch before the next Critical Role episode, may I suggest this video right here, and thank you for entering the dungeon.